voice of God calls us to awaken him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Let's pray together. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great Masters,
great Masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we humbly invoke thy presence.
we humbly invoke thy presence.
Free us,
Free us
from all limitations,
from all limitations,
all anger,
all anger,
all desires,
all desires,
all attachments,
All
attachments
that keep us from uniting ourselves
that keep us from uniting ourselves
with thy infinite spirit.
with thy infinite spirit.
We are yours.
We are yours.
Be thou ours.
Be thou ours.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
And this is a song from Swami Kriyananda's oratorio, which is The Life of Christ set to music, and this is entitled Thy Will Be Done. And it takes place in the story when Christ resigns himself to be crucified.
Continue to meditate as I read to you these words from Affirmations for Self-Healing on the topic of inspiration. Inspiration is of two kinds: the rediscovery or rearrangement of thoughts that already exist in the subconscious mind, and the sudden appearance of new thoughts or new insights from the superconscious. This higher inspiration certainly is more to be desired than the lower, for it is based in truth and not in imagination. It is not always easy, however, to recognize the difference between lower and higher inspiration, particularly when the lower is vitalized by the emotions. When inspiration comes, receive it with calm love and see whether, untouched by emotion, its impulse grows stronger or weaker. Love is the water that nourishes true inspiration. Let's affirm together, first in a strong voice, then a normal speaking voice, then a whisper, and then mentally. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
In calmness I receive inspiration from my higher self.
In calmness I receive inspiration from my higher self.
I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
In calmness I receive inspiration from my higher self.
In calmness I receive inspiration from my higher self.
Now in a whisper, but increase your concentration. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness I receive inspiration from my higher self. Now mentally, but with even deeper concentration, vocalizing your feeling inward and upward in an inspired fashion as we affirm. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. Pray silently with me. O Spirit, thou art all truth. In thee lies the solution to my every need. Inspire me now, Lord. Show me which path to follow of the many that lie before me. Oh. Good morning, friends. Good morning. I'm Narayan. This is my wife, Dharmadevi. For those who don't know, I just want to welcome all of you here, new friends, old friends, and our friends joining us online. And I wanted to share, too, that we got an email from Swami's Jyotish and Devi. They're the directors of Ananda Worldwide. They're in Italy right now. There's an Ananda community in Assisi. There is a Kriyaban retreat that's happening at Ananda Assisi. So there's Kriyabans, devotees from all over the world that are there, and they were just sharing that the inspiration is quite high. And they sent their love, so I wanted to extend their blessings. Mm-hmm. So this is a reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And this reading is Who Are True Christians? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it, in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ said in chapter 10 of the Gospel of St. John, "All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them." Many Christians, not surprisingly, quote this saying in condemnation of other spiritual teachers. Not only the Old Testament prophets, but also Buddha, Krishna, and others who lived before Jesus, as well as, by inference, any who came after him. Yet Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 5, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am come not to destroy, but to fulfill." Nowhere do we find Jesus condemning or even gently criticizing other spiritual masters. His criticisms were reserved for worldly attitudes and for those hypocritical Pharisees who had allowed religion to become for them a pretense. Paramahansa Yogananda explained that the expression, "all that ever came before me," referred to those spiritual teachers who placed their egos and their self-importance ahead of the Christ consciousness, in the sense of drawing people's devotion to themselves and not offering it where alone it truly belongs, to God. Yogananda himself was very firm in this regard. For example, he never spoke of anyone as his disciple. Instead, he always insisted, "They are God's disciples. God is the guru, not I." Ego is a way station on the soul's journey toward enlightenment. The soul is first trapped in lower bodily forms. Slowly it evolves to the human level, at which point self-consciousness appears. Only in human form can self-consciousness transcend material form altogether, including the lower identity of ego consciousness, and discover the true, divine self within. Self-consciousness, manifested as ego, is an incentive to deliberate self-development. Later, in the process of development, however, the ego becomes an obstruction. Inevitably, new spiritual aspirants do not emerge effortlessly from the vortex of ego consciousness. Desire must be offered up resolutely and ever more wholeheartedly on the altar of infinity. It is a gradual process, and few, even among those who seek to help others, are free of ego. If, however, their motive in teaching is not to serve, but to be served, they deserve a severe reprimand as Jesus gave them. For their direction of development is no longer upward, but downward. In the name of giving up desires, they are creating new ones. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, desire obscures even the wisdom of the wise. Their relentless foe it is, a flame never quenched. Intellect, mind, and senses, these combined are referred to as the seat of desire. Desire through them deludes and eclipses the discrimination of the embodied soul. O Arjuna, discipline your senses, and having done so, work to destroy desire, annihilator of wisdom and self-realization. Give God the credit for everything you do. See him as the true doer. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning again.
Good
Morning.
I'm going to read to you from Whispers from Eternity. This is the prayer demand to the holy vibration for omnipresence. O holy vibration, boom on the shores of my consciousness. Break the limiting boundary of my body consciousness. Reverberate through my body, mind, and soul, through my surroundings, through all the cities and lands of this earth, through all the planets, throughout the universe, and every atom particle of creation. Unite my consciousness with thy cosmic consciousness. Well, this is a first this morning. If you've ever had one of those mornings where you had a difficult time getting out of bed and your body just didn't want to cooperate, so it just took everything you had to just kind of haul the body onto a wheelbarrow and push it along. Well, that was my morning. And in the process of wheeling myself out the door, I forgot my notes. So I said, it must be meant to be that this was not a ploy of Satan, it was a ploy of God's to get me without my notes. But Narayan said to me, just remember the skylight. And because, I'll give you the backstory, because Swami Kriyananda, when he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, he was, he didn't have Master's original notes on the Gita, and he had a super conscious dream where Master said, don't forget the skylight, that, God's omnipresence is always there. And I said to Narayan, though, when he said that, but the skylight has termites on it. So my vision may be obscured, but I'll do my best. So this topic, it's a little challenging. We have these topics for every Sunday service. The other week, Paul gave a beautiful talk on Satan, and here I'm talking about Christians, and we're a yoga church. It's like we're talking a lot about God and Satan and Christianity, but I grew up in the Bible Belt in Georgia, which some of you may be aware of, and a friend of ours was telling us how growing up, she had Jesus just shoved down her throat so much that she became an atheist. And she was an atheist for 50 years until she had a spiritual awakening and, all of that. So she's telling me Jesus just shoved down my throat. I'm like, where did you grow up? California, LA. I'm like, you haven't had Jesus shoved down your throat. I grew up in the Bible Belt. I mean, we know something very special about shoving spiritual God down people's throat there. Just to share one story of this, along this vein. I worked at a pizza restaurant. My first job was it was called My Father's Place. And this was my father's place. And so every Sunday we'd get, all the mega church, good churchgoers in the restaurant, and, we would joke sometimes because they wouldn't always be acting very Christian-like. But a coworker of mine, she was a hardcore fundamentalist, and she said to me one day, she was just like so concerned, and you could tell. I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "The Christians are being persecuted in Mexico." And I said, "That's terrible. Who are they being persecuted by?" And she said, "The Catholics." And I was like, "What do you?" Because I grew up Catholic. I was a small minority in Georgia of Catholics, and so for me to hear there was a difference between Catholics and Christians was just mind-boggling, and that the Catholics apparently were persecuting the Christians. Because there in Mexico they were minorities, I imagine, the Christians that are non-Catholics. Anyways, so it was interesting growing up in that. But Christianity is not at all what we think it is. What we think of as my friend and all fundamentalists of all religions, all spiritual backgrounds, is what Yogananda called churchianity. And churchianity likes to be loud and likes to tell us what the right thing is, even though it may not know. And Christianity, quite differently, is those who follow the teachings of Christ and all the great masters. Because what does Christ mean? Christ is the anointed one, same root as Krishna. And it's not, as probably most of you know, Jesus' last name was not Christ. Jesus, the Christ, or the anointed one. And so, really, the true Christians are those that try to remove anger and hatred and separation and everything else that keeps us bound to this world of Maya. Where does anger come from? Anger is when our desires, as Swami Kriyananda is talking about in this reading, are thwarted. And when we don't get what we want. We throw a temper tantrum. And sometimes it's not an outer temper tantrum, as we may have done when we were little kids. It's sometimes an inner temper tantrum. And that anger, though, boils up and bubbles out into our lives. I was thinking about this with anger, that it's really that we're trying to control everything. We're trying to control life. And it's just a little bit off, because we can't control anyone, of course. We know that if we're here. We probably have tried at different times and seen how it blows up in our faces. But we can control something. I was thinking, because it's like, we can't control anything. But that's an easy way out. We can. We can control ourselves. And a beautiful thing that Naya Swami Diksha was sharing during Spiritual Renewal Week, that Swami Kriyananda said, was that self-control is the first step towards union with God. So we have to learn, this is kind of the foundation, just like Master Yogananda said that loyalty is the first law of God. It's our foundation. If we can't control our reactions, our anger, our misplaced emotions, then how can we expect to have any positive effect on the world? So control, basically what Yogananda said was, when you want to criticize others, turn the criticism inward. And really, this is the same thing, is that we want to control things outside of ourselves. And when we don't, we get angry. And we judge and we criticize everyone else around us, because everyone else must be to blame for things not going right in our lives. But really, it's that we need to learn and practice self-control. And when we can take the criticisms and judgments, beautiful that our friend shared with us just on Friday, that her affirmation is no judgment, no separation. And just if we can, once we feel a little, that impulse to judge or to criticize or to separate out, that's what Maya is the separator. It says, she's there, he's there, we're all separate. It's Maya, it's delusion. It's this veil that has been placed over our eyes until we burn through it with the spiritual eye. But if we can burn through that feeling of separateness, just at the moment that we feel it happening, if we say, oh, God, he didn't do what he should have done. And we can just say, no judgment, no separation. Turn the searchlights within. Turn the criticism within, because it doesn't feel good. That's why Yogananda said turn the criticism within, because we don't want to be criticized. And as soon as we do it, it's, okay, I've had enough of that, I'm not. And it's a training process. It's just like the practice of Hong Sa. We're training our minds. It doesn't mean that our minds don't wander, but when they wander, we bring it back again. And the mind eventually gets sick of it and says, okay, I guess I'll focus on what you want me to focus on. Well, just that same way, if we can turn every time it happens, a judgment, a criticism, no matter how small. And we can't think that some little idle gossip or whatever it may be is not a judgment. We can justify our judgments. We don't justify the judgments. Just turn it, how does it feel when I say that about myself? Because we're all one. So if we're criticizing others, we're criticizing the self. We're criticizing God. So turn it within, and even if you don't feel that about yourself, say, if I'm seeing that and it's causing me such disharmony or even a little disharmony, what is it in myself that's causing that? And when we can do that, then more and more we can, not that we want to get into self-deprecation, oh God, I really am terrible, I really am awful, and I really don't do anything right. No, that doesn't help. But it's just those little pangs that strengthen us. And really, I was thinking of this because Narayan's father would offer some beautiful advice. He said, you need duck skin And whenever someone throws some negativity or some criticism at you, you've grown duck skin because you have criticized yourself enough, because you've felt criticism for anyone else in the world and you've directed it within. You've gained strength. You've grown stronger, and you've got that duck skin. Why duck skin? Because you could call it swan skin, because Yogananda is his name, Paramahansa is the supreme swan. It means that all the negativity just rolls right off your back. Focus on the good. Hold on to the good. When you have a spiritual experience, awakening of some sort, even just a tiny little moment of clarity, of peace, of love that transcends anything you've experienced in the world, hold on to it and don't ever think, I must have made that up, or don't, even if you have done that, don't worry, it was a true experience. Hold on to it. You don't need to broadcast it to anyone, but feel it in your heart, hold it as sacred, and hold it as a sacred gift from Divine Mother, because we never know how far the space between those special sacred moments will be. So recall them and don't think, oh God, it's going to be years before I experience that again. Just think, I have God already. And then as we can practice that, we become true Christians. We become Christ-like, because all the anger gets transformed. It's not that it goes away and we become these meek little mild weaklings. No, we get stronger and stronger until all we radiate out is love and blessings to everyone. So thank you. God bless you.